All right. Good morning. We are joined by Greg Tompsett of Cover One. Big news. He is embarking on his own show, and obviously we're real intrigued, real excited for him to find out what his vision is for it. Greg, thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, one of the biggest benefits of, owning a company is nobody can tell you no. It's great. So no, I'm really excited
Well,
about giving this a shot here and debuting on Friday night.
excellent. So that's one of the things I noticed in the announcement where it had the hey, after all this begging, we finally gave him a new show. And I'm thinking, okay, it's you and Eric. So obviously you had a discussion, but yeah, I would think you would have been able to kind of say, hey, I'm doing this.
Yeah, I always enjoy when people are able to poke a little bit of fun at themselves. It makes
It's one of the
everything
things
way better.
I try to take pride in is, I think self-deprecating humor is one of the best approaches to things.
Absolutely.
Oh,
So ironically enough, we were going to have you on anyways, before your big announcement, and we were going to talk some CBA. We were going to talk some off-season decision-making process. I think some people, including myself, are real interested in kind of really digging into the weeds. Kind of feel like this is the week where the Bills will sit down together after the Senior Bowl, after the Super Bowl. All the guys will get in like the quote unquote war room that you envision and that you see. Don was, fortunate enough to be in that room for many years under a lot of different, head coaches, a lot of different, ways of approaching it. So I think it's pretty interesting, especially with you on here, Greg, as a CBA guru yourself, to just really kind of get into the weeds of what that process looks like. And then maybe, talk through some of the, the important free agents and the decisions that, the 2023 Bills have.
Yeah. And I got to ask, just based off of that, what in the world made you want to become such a student of the CBA?
So it's one of those things that just kind of happened and evolved organically. So I'm one of those fortunate people that I was relatively blessed in my ability to do math. Ever since I was little, I could do math in my head. They skipped me ahead some grades in school to do stuff. I didn't do anything with it. I probably should have kept doing more math at some point in my life, but
This counts.
yeah, whatever. So in my professional life, I do a fair amount of financial analysis and actual contract negotiations and things. So some of the more boring legalese part of it, I'm used to. And I do that in my regular day job. And so then, some of the pieces of it, I was also the kid who, I would play the Madden franchises, but I would spend more time on the roster construction part of it than playing the game. I liked all the like, who could I squeeze in? And like, oh, well, if I get this guy younger, I can then develop him. And like, I like that piece of it. So that was always where I came from. Then I would start playing around with some of the contract things and like putting out my guesses and stuff like that. And people would start asking questions. So then I would start researching more and reading into things and learning how to do other pieces of it. And then that would lead to more people asking questions. So then I would go research more and go look up more things. And then after a while, it turned into I had read the CBA, like literally just read the whole thing and had gone through each of the pieces. So when the new one got negotiated, I was literally like scrounging around trying to figure out who had access to it as soon as it came out and learning how to do it. And because of my real world job, I'm pretty good with Excel. So I already had some like templates built with some of the different tools of how you can use different bonuses to prorate things and the differences between likely to be earned and not likely to be earned incentives and how to and all of it would turn into, okay, what are the easiest ways to hide cap money and to move the shell game around? And anywhere that there was an option, and I won't lie, I learned some of it from like Mickey Loomis and people like that, where I'm like, what are they doing to hide these things in New Orleans? And I would go research it and be like, all right, well, they converted this over to that. And if you do that, it does this. And it slowly over the years, it just built into each of those was a little tool in my tool belt as I'm learning how to build contracts. And it was fun. And now it's become a thing where I have a good time trying to put out some of the projections and guesses on the contracts. And fortunately, I've got pretty good at it.
Yeah, that's solid.
So maybe we'll ask you, Don, what was your process to learn the CBA?
Well, a couple things he just said that are really interesting. Excel. I've spoken at a few colleges and had some Q&A, and I've had some students say, "Hey, we're working on Excel, and this should I continue to?" I said, "Look, the league still uses it. Every team in the league still uses it. It's not going away. Absolutely, continue to learn everything you can about Excel." You mentioned Mickey Loomis. The Saints have he's not assistant GM because that was Jeff Ireland, but the Saints hired a contract guru named Kai Harley from the league office. And he was the guy that every time there was a contract done at the Bills, I was one of the few people designated to write up an electronic contract. So there's the money part of it, and there's the clauses, the language part of it, and they have to match up, and it's in this template that all of the teams use. So it comes into the league in a uniform way, and then goes to the management council, and every team can see everyone else's contract. And if you did anything wrong, and you had to get the contract in by 4 o'clock, not 4 o'clock in 1 second, like 3:59 Eastern time, and you get a call, you think you have a done deal, and all of a sudden a 212 number comes up from New York City. "Hey, Don, it's Kai Harley." I'm like, "Oh no." What? He's, "Yeah, you got to redo this," which means that you had to call the agent back to say, "Hey, remember that part that we thought was compliant with the league? Nope, we got to redo it." So any announcement had to hold off. The team had to hold off. Sometimes we had a guy waiting in a conference room with Chris Brown and a TV camera for the Bills crew, and they're like, "Guys, we got to put this off. We have to go back and fix something." But Kai left the league. He was that guy who would oversee all the contracts, left the league, and became the cap guru with the Saints. So when you say you see that Mickey Loomis is doing some interesting things, the guy behind that is pretty much a genius like you. I don't know if he skipped a couple of years of school and math, but yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's creative.
And it was that kind of idea, and that makes total sense, that the guy who saw every contract coming into the NFL would have the Rolodex of, "Hey, here are all the different things." Because that's all I'm doing. Like, I'm not inventing new things. I'm just saying, "Hey, here are all the different things I've seen people use." And I used to tell people until last year, honestly, I wish Brandon Beane would dip into that bag of tricks more that we see other people. And like, I've never seen him use void years. I've never seen him use, 6-year deals with a deferred but guaranteed option bonus in the second year that still fully prorates out. And all of a sudden, now we saw a little bit with Josh. There was the Emmanuel Sanders 2 years ago was the first time he ever put void years in a contract. And then last year, he busted the whole thing open, and we were restructuring everybody. We were doing all the different tricks. And it was, I wonder, is that something where I think a lot of fans don't realize part of that's ownership? Because you can do all the things you want, but somebody's got to cut a check that day. Yeah. And that if you have a team that Bills fans used to hear the term cash to cap all the time, and hey, we're trying to keep clean and we want it, and that is a perfectly reasonable budgeting strategy. It's also, on the cheaper side of things of why it's a fancy language way of saying I don't want to overextend myself financially.
Yeah. So
I'm curious where that comes into play of how many teams wish they could use all those tools and how many have an owner that lets them.
That's a really interesting point. And maybe we could go back to when Ralph Wilson owned the team and then going to the Pagulas. Mr. Wilson was on the tighter side of things. I would say cash to cap was the big phrase back then. Maybe to Greg's point, what ownership, like, I guess we start there. How involved in the process is Terry Pagula or was Kim Pagula in these meetings? Do they have to get signed off on every transaction? How did that look?
Yeah, you're getting me to think here. Josh, you mentioned that we should try to get Jeff Littman on the show. Jeff was Mr. Wilson's right-hand man. He was a financial genius. And, Mr. Wilson, I think in general, as the years went on, he became less concerned with the cash part of it. I don't know why, but he was even pretty vocal about that. But the TV money grew every year, And the TV money, in a way, almost was just about the 1/32nd share was just about the same in the same ballpark as what the salary cap was for the players. So the cash became less important to him, but he wanted to make sure that, he just wanted to stay competitive. And so Jeff kind of inserted himself coming from Detroit to his goal was to educate the coaches. Greg, you just mentioned that you have a math mind that just kind of hits you, but not everyone has that. Coaches, a lot of people are visual learners. They have to see it. So what would happen is we'd all go in the room on the football side, sit in like the defensive team meeting room. There would be a screen in the front of the room with an Excel spreadsheet. It would show every player that was under contract in the coming year, what their cash and cap hit was, and then soon to be free agents, players that were, on the roster this past year, but were about to hit the market. And they would do a projection with Jim Overdorf, Kevin Meegang, some other guys, and say, okay, this is what we're hearing this player's market value is going to be. And if we want to keep him, here's what it means. So every position coach then and the coordinators would have a chance to make their case where they thought they needed help. And if above and beyond that, if they had their eyes on a particular player that maybe they saw when they were with another team or in college or something, they would say, hey, this is the kind of player that can be a difference maker for us. So, okay. And they would say, so they would show the board, and okay, let's say we sign this guy for, 3 years, 15 million. Let's do it. Boom. They'd hit it. And you'd see it, and instantly, not only would you see that number go in, okay, we just acquired this player, here's what it costs, but you would see the zero-sum cap go down by that amount, and people would just gasp, and it would be like, it just looked bad. And it got real contentious in the room because things were real competitive. Every position coach wanted their group to improve
their target guy.
Exactly, but they wanted to they didn't want to come across as not a team player too. So it then became up to the coordinators and ultimately the head coach and the GM to say they had to make their own determinations about what their real needs were. And if there was a player at that position and their market value was absorbable, affordable, okay, we're deciding to do this. We know a lot of you are going to be disappointed. And they would always kind of throw that caveat, but look, there's always the draft.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny that I think that a lot of fans need to realize there should be some healthy tension in those rooms, because there should always be some level of counterbalance of, hey, the GM should be looking 3 years down the line. They shouldn't always be looking at tomorrow. The coach should only be looking at tomorrow and how we can make the team better right now. And there should always be an element of, hey, what do we need to plug and play day one versus, hey, your title is coach for a reason. I need you to coach these players and make them better. So, hey, here's a scratch and dent sale that I need you to, be able to help us make the most out of. But your title is coach for a reason. And there should always be a little of that healthy tension in my opinion.
It reminds me of the scene in Braveheart where all of the nobles are like petitioning the king for their own, piece of the pie, and it gets real contentious. And then William Wallace walks in and is like, "You guys are just fighting over scraps," So maybe, do you have a memory? Did each coach, did each GM, did each regime kind of handle it differently? Were there some where there was a little bit livelier debate? Was there some that it was more of like an edict from above that this is the way it's going to be? Like, do you have a fun story from? Maybe where it got real heated?
Yeah, first of all, there was no table in the room like in Braveheart.
Okay.
Yeah, punishment wasn't. It was just you wouldn't get your guy.
Yeah, right.
You weren't on the freedom table. But I think the first thing that comes to mind was, quite honestly, I was always wondering, what is my role here? And I know it was to help Jim Overdorf kind of take notes and hey, if there's anything that one coach said that after the fact that should resonate, but I remember they were just trying to know, are these guys someone that we want to invest in? How committed are they? What drives them? And I remember there was the players picked up their pay every Wednesday from my office, and We went to direct deposit, but there was a time, some guys just didn't like direct deposit. And I remember Jason Peters didn't have direct deposit, and he didn't pick up like the last 8 paychecks of the season. And then he was a free agent. And so they kept saying he's going to demand the world. His agent's saying he's going to be the highest paid left tackle in the league. And, this is what really drives it. And I remember saying, I hope this is relevant. But guys, and I told him what I just shared. I said, Jason Peters, you may say he loves money, but he might like the idea of money because he's not picking up his paychecks. And I remember Dick Duran came afterward and said, thank you for that. That's kind of a window into his soul. I don't know what it meant. I can't remember what we did with him. I think we re-signed him for a couple of years. He held out, but
there was the initial one before he got traded to the Eagles. That they initially kept him, and then it eventually turned into the holdout where he had to get traded.
That reminds me, you do have a story on the other end of that spectrum that you have told once on this podcast. I don't know if Greg has heard it. He'll love it. Maybe you can just walk us through the time where you affected a free agent in a negative way in one of those meetings. This is my favorite Don story ever.
Well, all right. So I was in a meeting, Mr. Wilson. There was a big table. I sat by the wall, and they went through every single player and what's his future with us. And there was a certain first round pick who
left tackle from Texas.
And it was at the end of the day, it was a 2-day meeting. And Mr. Wilson, someone said, hey, could you drive Mr. Wilson back to his apartment in Williamsville? His home was in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, but when he came here, he had an apartment in Williamsville. And I'm like, that doesn't sound optional, but I'm going to, sure, of course. But then I remember, like, do I open the door? It was pouring rain. Do I open the door for him? Do I open the apartment door for him? He was in his 80s. Is that insulting to him? Whatever. I was getting hung up on little things. But we're in the car, and he said, hey, this fella we're talking about, what are your impressions of him? And I said, well, I had to come up with something or say something. I didn't make it up. But I just said, I remember one conversation where he came in the office, and he said, hey, who do I talk to around the building that can help me get the best return on a $100,000 investment? I'm like, well, I know some folks that are pretty savvy. And I told them Bill Munson. Okay, sounds good. And I remember walking around, I heard him asking other people. And I remember thinking to myself, man, if he just gets a second contract, the return on a $100,000 investment is going to be, chump change. So, okay, fine. I gave him something. The second day, we get ready to open the day 2 of 2. And Mr. Wilson said, whoa, hold on. He goes, Don, I want you to share with the room what you shared with me in the car last night. I'm like, oh, okay. And I had to say it verbatim.
This is in front of the scouts who pushed for him.
Yeah.
Tom Modrak, who this is the 4th pick in the draft. This isn't some 7th rounder.
Yeah.
These guys' reputation was on the line with him. So you got to stand up in front of
the eyes were cutting right.
That is the absolute worst case scenario working in the NFL is when you. Especially when, Mr. Wilson, and you got to tell the truth because Mr. Wilson's in the room.
Yeah, I can't embellish it or say less or more. And the player didn't survive.
That was the end of his career in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the end part is it's also helpful when that player doesn't go on and flourish somewhere else. And then it was like, well, that actually was the right decision to
save the team
that.
there.
Yeah, like Jason Peters, did do very well.
But Peters went on, he's still playing. The man is still playing football.
It's crazy. Incredible. But this player, did not. You're right. That helps. Okay, getting rid of him.
It'd be a lot more painful. That. Those scouts or coaches wouldn't let you hear the end of it if he went on and became a
So maybe we bring this forward to this year. To this offseason. And I guess my first question for Don, and Greg might have an opinion here or some thoughts. The hometown discount. Does it exist? How is it? Is it something that they bring up in the building? Is it something that you ever spoke to an agent about? Is it assumed? Is it, persona non grata? Do you never speak about it? Because obviously the Jordan Poyer situation, is trending that way if he comes back here. So maybe you could just talk us through if that's even a thing.
You can't bank on it. You can't count on it. I would say there were maybe 2 players where it came up and it appeared to kind of come to fruition, and we'd have to ask them, but it was suggested that Kyle Williams and Eric Wood might both be candidates to, not settle. That's the wrong word, but there might be some kind of marginal acceptance of, to stay here. But it wasn't something you can really say, hey, that guy, he'll take less because he just likes to be here. It's such an intangible that, that's probably the best I could do. And guys that after it happened, we thought maybe even with comments that they made later, like, hey, they really liked it here. They were captains.
It was
never
it was never mentioned to an agent. Like, you'd never say to the agent, hey, does he really want to be here?
No, it wouldn't be insulting.
Okay.
To say, well, yeah, you'd ask that question.
Okay.
Yeah, does he want to be here? Otherwise, are we wasting time here? But not does he want to be here and accept less?
Sure.
I want to say that I want to kind of sanity check some theories I've had that you can help me with, Don. I always try to tell fans everything's on a relative scale. And so when you used a very particular word there, in that, there's a marginal level where, of course, I always say, hey, it's different if you're talking to a veteran who's about to sign his third contract because he already got his rookie deal and he already got his big second deal. The second deal is always the big deal because that's when it's your opportunity to cash in. So anytime you're talking to a veteran who we're talking about contract 3+, you have a little more wiggle room. They've already cashed in. They're doing well. But the marginal level still comes in when it's, hey, do I really want to uproot my family? Do I really want to sell my house and move somewhere else when it's $10.5 million versus $12.5 million? Yeah, you know what? $10.5 million is still a lot of money. And I'm happy here. And I'm not going to go to Jacksonville just because it's an extra $2 million a year when we're doing pretty good in life. However, nobody's taken $4 million instead of 12.5. Like, it's crazy. Like, you're never going to do that. So where it comes in my mind is, sure, do people shave a little bit off? Do they allow things here or there? I think that probably happens. The areas that I think, in my perception of seeing the contracts come through, the hometown discount to me means, are you willing to turn over the keys to the front office that, hey, we built the 30,000-foot view structure. You can go build it however helps the team. Like, I need these tentpole numbers here of average annual value. I want my Trey White. I want my agent to be able to send out the tweet that says highest paid cornerback in NFL history. But honestly, any of the details underneath, if you need to move a thing around here or set something up as a bonus here, we already did the years. We already did the average annual value. We already did the guarantees. How you need to slice and dice that, build the team friendliest structure you can to help out the rest of the team. I'm on board. That, to me, in the modern NFL, is the hometown discount. I'm doing finger quotes for people who are listening. That, to me, is the hometown discount now, not that, people are actually taking money off the table, other than the later veterans who it's just not as big of a deal to them. Is that crazy, or is that close?
No, it's right on. I think you mentioned a couple things too. The families do matter. If the wife and the kids are in school and they like their experience, and that might be a factor in that again marginal part.
Sorry to interrupt. Or if you're a position coach with a wife who was born and raised in Florida, that you made her move here and she just suffered through 2 generational storms, and all of a sudden you get offered a lateral deal to go back to Florida. All of a sudden that might carry some weight, is what you're saying?
It cuts that way too.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But yeah, you're right. But the agent is highly relevant here. And yeah, if they have a player who's a all pro player, naturally their goal is to be able to say that in the total package deal, the incentives likely to be earned, they have to be likely to be earned. If they're not, you can't count them with a good conscience. But if they are, and maybe you could explain what likely to be earned is. I have heard you talk about this on your show, but if they can say that, it's the highest contract for a cornerback in the league, even if they have to make some concessions to be able to kind of pay for that bragging right. But so on the likely to be earned, if cornerback or safety had 5 interceptions one year. The next year, if you say likely to be earned, has to be, I think, 1. I don't think this has changed. Just 1 above it.
Yep.
The same or 1 above it. Yeah.
My understanding is, and so there's some areas where you can use it to your advantage. The NFL makes 2 different qualifications for incentives. An incentive can be likely to be earned or not likely to be earned. And the differentiator is, did they do it last year? That's the simplest way to think about it. So if, a good example was, we couldn't do that with Von Miller and make a not likely to be earned incentive of make it to the Super Bowl, because the year before he made it to the Super Bowl. So for him, that would be a likely to be earned incentive. Whereas doing that for Jordan Poyer, you could put that as an incentive. And the reason that they differentiate that is, if an incentive is likely to be earned, it counts right now on the cap. They assume you're going to achieve it. And then at the end of the year, if you don't, you kind of get a discount back.
Yep.
If
that amount comes back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. If you set one out there that's not likely to be earned and they do achieve it at the end of the year, you not owe that money, but it hits the next year's cap as, hey, that's money that you spent that you now don't have available. And I use it as a trick anytime you're pursuing a player who was injured the year before and all of a sudden their raw stats look deflated. Now, that would, to me, that would be a sales pitch to the agent to say, hey, I can throw some things out there that let us defer the cap hit to the next year. Because technically, Nyheim Hines, we didn't use him as a running back when he got here. I think we might restructure with him. We can set up some pretty achievable, not likely to be earned incentives because we didn't use him as a receiver. So his catches, his yards, his receiving touchdowns are very low. I can set some pretty achievable numbers there where you can feel pretty good about it, that, hey, you got a pretty good chance to hit these, but it lets us kick the can down the road. They won't count as a 2023 cap hit, and we can defer it to 2024. That's an area where I think teams can be smart to use that as a weapon.
Yeah, and during those negotiations, the agent wants assurance that, look, you're saying all this, it sounds nice, but
what if you don't use them?
Yeah, are your coaches telling you that they plan to use them in the offense? And which coach told you that? And they'll ask all those questions because they don't want to be wrong.
Yeah, they'd much rather get it guaranteed than having
sure.
Yeah,
maybe you could talk a little bit about the agent perspective here. So what does the communication look like between you, Jim Overdorf, the team, and the agent? Like, how often, if it's a big contract, let's say it's Jordan Poyer, or it's Tremaine Edmonds, or it was Von Miller last year, or when you were there it was Mario Williams, the big guys. How often are you in contact with the agent? Is it mostly phone call, email? Like, do they have assistants as well? Is it like assistant to assistant until it's time to sign? Like, what does that whole process look like?
Yeah, well, a player of that caliber will usually be dealing with an agent that has his own office, so he has other people. So in my case, Jim was the lead, or it might have gone, the GM might have done some of the negotiations or the high level talk where, my correspondence was usually with an associate. It's well framed, and hey, this is happening. I know they're talking, and he might ask me some questions about, hey, if he does sign with you, and they always blow smoke. We hope they do. What are some of the things that can you help put me in touch with the player engagement director, or hey, he's coming off of an MCL sprain. Is it possible to talk with the trainer? Those are the kind of level of conversations I would have. But in terms of the actual deal, Jim would have to be in constant contact with Jeff Lippman and Mr. Wilson, and just to say for the caliber of the player that you just mentioned.
How many hours would you say went into like the Mario Williams signing from you, Jim, like from the Bills side?
Yeah, I remember when the season was over, Jim, he said, what do you think if hypothetically, if we were to sign a player like Mario Williams? And I'm like, hypothetically, but he gave me like this weird look. Like, I said, wait a minute, is this really just hypothetical? He's maybe not. Okay. That was weeks before free agency. But with a guy like that, you knew it was such a glaring need, the pass rush, that you were all putting all your eggs in the Mario Williams basket, that you were going to knowingly not be able to do. And Greg will have a great understanding of this. Once you signed him, there was going to be hardly anything left, but you were addressing your biggest need. And there's a something to be said for exciting the fan base too.
Sure.
And I mean, I will say, some fans think Brandon Beane was kind of blowing smoke in his season-ending press conference when he talked about, "Hey, just to remind you guys, our big ticket item was Von Miller last year." He's not kidding.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
Not only was he our big ticket item last year, that 6-year, $120 million deal, we only paid for $5 million of it last year because we kicked all the rest of the can down the road. So,
Yeah.
not that I think it's not the exact same as 5 years and 115 million left, but hey, that number is going to go up here. And we now owe more of that money now. So the availability to splurge is certainly impacted.
Yeah, very much so.
Do you have a story? Do you remember like a contentious interaction with an agent? I know we did talk about Drew Rosenhaus, who Jordan Poyer retained as his agent going forward. Do you like were most agents or their assistants easy to deal with? Is the stereotype true about the agents where it's really difficult and they're like slick salesmen? Like what was your overall impression of some, most, all agents?
Well, they're all lawyers, Greg. So they do their homework and they want you to know that they did their homework. And but I think the most contentious part when free agency started, and there was a time where it was 4:00 Eastern time, like on Tuesday, March 7th or whatever it was, whatever that Tuesday was, like the second Tuesday of the month, and you have visits, and that was an all hands on deck situation. I remember, John Guy, the VP of pro personnel, was adamant about telling the stadium operations staff, I want the white glove treatment on everything. I want, when they walk in that lobby, I don't want to be able to take my finger and have any dust on the railings. I want this painted, all done now. I don't want anything. The only thing you can do is mess it up, as you always say.
Yep.
But because you only really have one shot at that first impression, and you could feel like a visit went really well. You have the upper executives taking them to dinner. You have some current starting players courting them. It's always nice if maybe they played with them in college or something. But as well as you could feel it went, as soon as they leave the building, the rumors, especially when Pro Football Talk became prominent, they're like, so-and-so's left the building, but he's going to Dallas, and he's meeting with it. They're doing this for him. And you're like, man, did we do enough? And the agents always want you to make you feel like nice try, but you're going to need to do more. And I know that's kind of a general overview of it. But some of them played that in a way that really just made your, wringing your hands a lot.
I got one that I need to ask as a fan on the outside looking in. I got the impression some years, and Mario Williams was obviously a significant exception, that sometimes Buffalo would be specifically used as the rabbit in a chase, and that it just seemed a disproportionate amount of time the team's name would come up in these rumors about and Buffalo is in on them or different things where there was the drought, there was Mr. Wilson's age and the desperation of wanting a championship while he was alive, and that it just seemed like from the outside looking in, sometimes I wondered, are we actually in on that guy? Do we actually have a chance at him, or are we just the rabbit here to get somebody else to up their deal? Were there times where you guys wondered that? Was that overstated, or were there times that agents burned their relationship with you guys because you guys got that impression?
Well, I would have to say there was kind of this prevailing thought. It was mostly unspoken, but that in order to land a player, we might have to pay a little bit of a premium. And it just felt like, okay, the weather and, what we're competing with, there's things we can control. There's things we can't control. Usually should be able to control how good you are of a football team. But even
now, weather and taxes are still real. Like
Yeah.
those are still real things.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I saw that was a topic that came up a couple weeks ago on the taxes there. But yeah, that can be quite a difference. You did a good job of pointing that out. But yeah, there was you didn't want to dwell on it, but as if you felt like you could get a guy there and show them that they were wanted. Josh, we had Kavika Mitchell on a few weeks ago, and he had just come off his Super Bowl, their kind of miracle season with the Giants after beating the undefeated Patriots. And he was surprised. He was kind of hurt that the Giants weren't making more of a push to keep him. And they were in the running, but we didn't talk numbers. But ultimately, what he said, there was two factors that made him decide to come here. One, the money was at least equal, maybe a little more. I can't recall than what other teams are offering, but he just really, really felt wanted, and that his college teammate, at least from his freshman year, Marcus Stroud, was here and told him that he liked it here. So, I mean, that's one example.
That's a really interesting point you bring up, Greg. Like, where you guys use is like the staking horse, right? Like as the and I remember that was absolutely out there. And I feel like, did you ever feel played either by a player or an agent? Like, did you know while it was going on? Was it after they left the building? Like there had to be times where you're like, oh man, we just got used. If you were the first visit on a free agency tour of 4 teams, right?
Yeah, I mean the players were so well coached; it was hard to pick up from them that they were anything but excited to be here. But ultimately, like Greg mentioned, if they visited a couple other teams and signed with one of them for the same money that we were offering, yeah, that stung.
Do you get a heads up usually if a player that you were courting went to another team? Would you find out before everyone else? Would you get like the heads up call from the agent?
The team would, they knew they wanted to keep the relationships strong. They knew
I will say, for as cheesy or as sleazy as agents come off as, there still is a customer service element and a customer experience element that they're also pretty good at.
Yeah, they understand that. Hey, this might not work out this time, but I need you to believe me. Next time we have a player in a situation, that I will be upfront with you, good or bad.
Did you ever go to any of the famous dinners at like Tempo or any of the free agent courting dinners?
I rarely did because I was back in the office helping to construct. So Jim would do all of the verbal and handwritten, believe it or not, clauses, and he would keep giving them to me to construct the electronic contract, which hopefully we were going to send in once there was a sign. It couldn't be
how
verbal.
Does somebody say yes?
There, yeah.
What are the mechanics of a player saying yes? So I mean, obviously it's a verbal agreement first, but like how we saw that this year with who was it, Greg, the running back from the Commanders?
JD McKissick.
Like what's the how do they actually sign? Like what's the mechanics of somebody saying yes, and then how long between they're saying yes until it's like binding?
Yeah. I mean, a verbal agreement has to be, it's not binding, and Greg could speak to that, but
I'll say that real quick for fans listening. The reason that happens is the mechanics of, and I have no idea why the NFL does this, what the purpose of there's a 48-hour legal tampering window where you're allowed to come to an agreement. And famously Anthony Barr switched, he agreed with the Jets and switched to go back to Minnesota. It's not, so the Bills weren't the only team. It's happened another half dozen times. Yeah. The reason is in that window, it's much different. You're only allowed to verbally agree. You actually can't. So from Monday at 4 p.m. until Wednesday, they might start at noon. I don't remember. So Monday afternoon, all the way till Wednesday at 4 p.m., you can't legally sign anything. Anytime you're after that point, the agreement probably has a signature along with it when it's announced. So there's way less opportunity for somebody to back out on something. Yeah. But in that legal tampering window, you're technically not allowed to. And you can help me with where I think Josh was going with this question. Before I interrupted, the piece with McKissick, you could tell Brandon Beane wasn't mad at JD McKissick. He was mad at the agent because, listen, you allowed the team to jump back into this. Once we had a verbal agreement, everybody knows in the NFL, this is done. This is not, hey, we have, because you need to tell me if the agreement is, hey, we're interested in that number, but we need to go back to the team. you didn't tell us that. You told us you agreed. In our business, that means it's done. Not we're going to go back and dangle this. And that, for my interpretation of it, Washington was like, oh, we're going to be out on you this year. Then it was, oh, you were willing to sign for that number? Well, for that number, we'd love to have you back. And now all of a sudden they were interested. They said, hey, we'll match that if you want to come back here. But that, and I will say, I assume that kind of thing does happen, that there's kind of that jockeying back and forth, and the home team has a little bit of a, hey, we're not really sure what it is, but if you bring us back a number, we'll match it. And I think the competing teams might know that. And if that happens, all right, tough luck, we lost out. But that wasn't the case. They had to come to an agreement. It got released as an agreement. And then Washington decided after the fact, oh, now we want to jump in. And now all of a sudden it made us look bad. It made him look bad. It made the agent look bad. Really, it was the agent in Washington that messed up, not McKissick or Pete.
Yeah, that crosses an ethical line and kind of the ways of the league. And yeah, you're right. I didn't follow that particular signing. I remember kind of the headlines of it, but I'll leave it to you to kind of dig deep into it. That's a bad look. I remember Larry Centers, when we got him way back in early 2000s, agreed. We were doing the contract, and then there's a window where, kind of like in anything with a house, you have 72 hours or something, but all of a sudden the next day you're like, wait a minute, he's getting cold feet because he talked to his agent, and the agent said, look, just so you understand, the net of your check, he was a Texas guy, is going to be this much less for the taxes that you're going to pay in New York. And he's like, oh, wait a minute, let's sit down and calculate that. He ended up still signing with us, but that it was, we thought maybe the agent, naturally should have explained all this before, not after he signed, but before, and that wasn't necessarily, we don't know if, the Cowboys or the Texans or whatever were making a play for him. I can't recall, but it was a bad look for him.
Is that held against the agent going forward? Like, do you remember that the next time you're dealing with him and you're like, hey, did you make sure to tell the guy about the taxes?
Yeah, whatever it is. I mean, if an agent kind of does you dirty, even in the slightest way, it's a game where the team officials will hold that, dangle it over his head. Hey, remember, you're not going to do this to me again, right? And vice versa, right?
Think about it in life. How many times do you have a thing, a friend, a coworker, another person did that was like that, and like you kind of use it as half a joke, but you're not actually joking? You're like, hey, remember to tell them about the taxes this time, and really it's like, no, idiot, tell them about the taxes this time, so we don't have to happen.
Passive aggressiveness can be your friend at times. Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. So you're
good at that,
being passive aggressiveness.
No, remembering things.
Oh, all right. Thanks.
Remembering things. I'm trying to think what. No, nothing egregious. I'm trying to think.
Was this a compliment, Greg? I don't know. I can't tell.
I'm still waiting to decide.
Thanks. I think.
But, man, you sure are good at holding a grudge.
Yeah. Oh, listen, we had the "You're Fired." We had the "You're Fired" episode last week. I mean, it's only been 22 years since I got let go, and I went in an hour rant about it. So I guess you do have a point. I mean,
yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Well, some things are worth holding on to.
Duly noted.
So, Greg, we've been doing this for 45 minutes now, and appreciate your time. And maybe we can talk about your new venture and, kind of the reason we decided to go live today. Maybe you can tell us about the Greg Tompsett show, when it's going to be. Obviously, everybody who's watching knows where it's going to be, and kind of why you decided to do this.
Yeah, and real quick, I noticed in the title, it's your sport show. So I like that. It's kind of a more an all-inclusive term. So I'm curious as to what went into that.
Yeah, so obviously, my involvement and now, evolving into partnership at Cover One has been awesome. It's been an amazing experience, and it centers around the majority of my passion, which is the Buffalo Bills specifically. But I've been a sports fanatic since I was a kid. I always joke all the time, like somebody could offer me amazing tickets to the symphony or to something that I'm sure is a beautiful experience. I'd rather go watch 8-year-olds play football. Like it's just it's just how I'm wired. So, or the goofy things I get into at the Olympics, or if you just give me the chance to chant USA, I'll watch anything. Like I do sports I don't even understand. You give me something to get into some level of competition, I'm ready to go. So obviously the Bills show has helped create all the different things with my Twitter account and all the different areas that is, very, very much 99% Bills centric. And I've leaned into that because it's just kind of how this works and what the things are. But I've always wanted to talk about other things and to have an opportunity to do that. And it's something that Aaron and Eric and I had kind of kicked around for a while as an idea and going through the different things. And finally it was really just planning. So the last couple months I've started to plan, and I've tried to take a serious approach to it. I actually have a producer who's going to be helping. I actually have two people who are coming on as kind of writers and researchers to help. And we're approaching it almost like a late night talk show or something like that, or a full-time show than just the regular reaction style show where we're going to have recurring segments and different bits that we're going to do and try to have fun with it and, joke about some of the different things we all love. What are the things that get people's reaction to things? And we've played around with it of like, hey, what are the things that I get, the most immediate crazy reaction when I post something? And like, well, that's what people like to talk about. Let's build a segment out of that. Let's do something with that. So everybody loves ranking things. Everybody loves debating, who's the best all time at this, or hey, some of the things that I remember with my friends, what are the most fun, bar arguments about things of like, oh, who are the top 5, what if scenarios of all time of like, if this guy hadn't have got hurt, who would have been the, those kind of debates, or, obviously recently it's come into like the Jordan and LeBron things. I don't even want to do like all time that kind of stuff. I want to do some of the fun stuff of different things. I'm going to do, what were your top 5 American Gladiator events that
the assault is the runaway winner.
See, so I want
the runaway winner.
I want to get into that to be able to talk about it. So, different people that I've built relationships with over the years that I can have on as guests, different fun things that we'll debate and go through. The centerpiece of each show is going to be the biggest sports story of the week. So this week's kickoff show is going to be about the Super Bowl. Then next week I'm going to do a whole thing on like, hey, what are these other sports? I don't know how this works now, the football stuff. And leaning into things like that. My researchers and writers really like my bit about not knowing hockey, and they like embarrassing me when I don't know things. So there's going to be a whole segment on Greg doesn't know, and they're just going to like, I'm not going to get to know it ahead of time. They're just going to ask me questions on the show, and I'm going to have to pretend to know what I'm talking about. We're going to,
like they're going to get one shot at that because you were a fast learner.
They are going to have to be good.
Yeah.
they are going to have to be creative after the first couple, but
yeah.
No, we're going to have some fun with it and look forward to giving it a shot here. So we're going to be doing Friday nights at 9:00. It's going to be available where you're listening right now to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo, and everywhere else on the Cover One platform. We'll also be live streaming YouTube, Facebook, everything like that, and everywhere podcasts are found. So really looking forward to it and hoping to have some fun with it. In talks with a couple of potential sponsors that I think have some possibilities here, but something that I'm really looking forward to and going to pour myself into at least having a good time.
I enjoy your hockey apprenticeship. I'll call it that. How about that? An apprenticeship into hockey. Did you grow up in Cleveland? Did you grow up here or in Cleveland?
In Buffalo. So south. Okay. So I grew up in the southern tier. I grew up down around like Jamestown, Chautauqua Lake area.
Okay.
And I grew up at a high school that was like a wrestling factory. So wrestling was a really big deal specifically at my school. So in the winter, that's what I did. I would go from football to wrestling. All the rest of my cousins and everyone like that, all of them skated and all of them played hockey. I was actually like the only one in my family who didn't. But because of that, like everybody else, when you're not good at something, you don't pour yourself into learning about it or knowing about it. So then I never learned to skate. And then because I didn't know how to skate, I didn't learn to skate to get good at it, because then I'd have to be bad at it for a while before I got good at it. So I didn't get into hockey, so I didn't learn it. So I mean, I'm not an idiot. Like I get the idea of how sports work, but some of the nuance of it, I always joke when I'm watching with other people who really know what's going on. And I'm always like, oh, so that's what it's like when people watch football with me, and I get excited before the thing happens because I can see what's about to happen, and they can they react to me reacting because I'm like getting excited before the thing because I already saw the guy break open and I could tell where he's going to throw it and it's going to be a touchdown. And And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And all of a sudden the goal's in the net. And I'm like, oh, cool. We scored. I have no idea how that
That's
happened.
funny. Hockey is a lot more nuanced than people realize. The
crazy.
analytics of hockey are just wild. You
Yeah.
know, what they've come up with like the last 5-10 years, like some of the people on Twitter and the advanced analytics are unbelievable. The heat maps.
So Chad and Anthony, who do
they're
Expected
unbelievable. They're
Buffalo,
great. They're
they've
great.
helped me a lot. They've actually recommended some books and different things. So now I probably play it up a little bit more than what I really don't know. But it's
totally
more
makes
fun
sense.
that way.
Yeah. So before we let you go here, we're gonna subject you to the same thing that we do with all of our former players,
Good
coaches,
call,
and staff. We're gonna do the 2-minute warning.
All right.
We're gonna give you 10 questions in 2 minutes, hopefully 2 minutes or less, and we're gonna just go ahead, Don. Fire away.
Good call. Okay, your most interesting place to watch a Bills game?
So it's my basement. I love my basement. I have it set up perfectly. I have multiple screens and a wonderful couch, and it's my favorite place.
Are you a lone watcher, or do you like watching with other people? Okay, you're
alone
a watcher.
and weirdly quiet.
Okay, 3 people dead or alive you'd want to have dinner with.
Muhammad Ali when he was all together. My grandpa, because he's awesome. Yeah, he might be Josh Allen.
There you go.
That's come up a few times.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. You're entering an arena. You're a big deal. There's dry ice. What's your entrance song?
The bass line and initial intro to Stevie Wonder's Superstitious.
Oh, good call. You ever hear Stevie Ray Vaughan's version of that song? Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, Stevie Ray Vaughan does a killer edition of that.
Oh, I need to find that. I got
it's outstanding.
Best concert you've ever been to.
Ooh. I've been to a couple of really good big ones, but I got to do like a 200-person really small venue of Chris Cornell on a stool with a acoustic guitar. That was amazing.
Unplugged. That's awesome. When you're in Buffalo, favorite restaurant and dish?
I love Bar Bill. I really do. Like, I always want to go for the beef on weck, and I am a very traditional Bill's wing, like just buffalo wing person. I like to get medium or hot, and that's it. And they're the best I've ever had.
Favorite cartoon growing up?
Ooh. I really was like Looney Tunes, like traditional, like Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd stuff. That was mine.
Yeah, me too. It's a popular food, but you hate it.
Baked beans.
Oh, give me the most annoying fan base to interact with on Twitter.
Oh God. It used to be the Patriots. They've actually been humbled enough that it's not quite as bad as it was. Super weirdly, the Titans. And I think part of it is because I don't understand why. Why are you talking so much? I don't understand.
Yeah. Can you drive a stick shift?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then I'll throw one off the board here. Quick prediction: do we re-sign Poyer, Edmonds, neither, or both?
Way to bring this home.
So I'm like 90-10 that Poyer's gone. I'm 50-50 that we keep Edmonds. So I'll say it's one and it's Edmonds, but I'm super torn.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Greg. We really appreciate it. Everybody tune in on Friday at 9 p.m. for the Greg Tompsett sports show. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, and then we'll see everybody in a little bit. We're going to this is our last episode of season 1. We're going to revamp a few things, change the jerseys in the background, maybe change the opening, and we'll be back within 10 days or so.
Sounds right.
with the debut of season 2.
Awesome.
Thanks, Greg.
Greg, great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, and a big shout out to your guys' kickoff here. It's been a ton of fun to have you aboard. Can't wait to see what you guys do in year 2.
Absolutely.
Thank you.